Hey, what's up, heavy metal fans? Back with another album review of a band that I had yet to listen to, but I saw that they had just released an album in March. So I figured, hell, I'll just check them out and see what they're all about. And this band is the California thrash metal band Warbringer, and the album title is Woe to the Vanquished. Basically, after doing a little bit of research on these guys, they basically are part of what would be considered the kind of like the thrash slash speed metal revival, kind of not trend, but kind of era where the early to mid 2000s, a lot of bands started kind of getting into the I guess idea of bringing back purist thrash metal, speed metal, and into the next next generation of music and music listeners, because they've all were real big fans of all those bands that were on top of the world back in the 80s. And that's pretty much what you can expect from this album. And this is the most recent album, and I think this is like their fifth. So I'm not aware of what the content is like on the previous albums. So all my my criticisms and my and my praise or whatever for this album will be based simply on this. So don't get pissed off if you're a Warbringer fan, and my critiques are not don't hold as much water because of what you are aware of, what they've done in the past. So I'm just going by this album and this album alone. Basically, for most of the album, I was not overly enthusiastic, and that's, I will say from the get-go, that for me is because I've listened to so much heavy metal, over the past 25, some odd years, that especially tons of American thrash metal, tons of speed metal, that from both the States and over, Germany and whatnot. So I've listened to all the ones that made this genre as great as it has become. And so when a band comes out that's new and they're kind of paying tribute to that past style, I've kind of my musical portion of my brain, I guess, wherever your enjoyment of music comes from, has kind of been saturated by this style of music, to the point where, for me, if it's just kind of it does justice to the style, and it's well done, but there's not a lot of originality and ideas coming, through and being presented, then to me it just kind of falls flat. But if you're, if you're just a thrash metal purist, you probably will enjoy this album anyway, regardless. And if you haven't listened to a lot of thrash, this is a fine representation of the style, as it was in the 80s, and maybe into the 90s a little bit, but more of the the original type stuff for thrash and speed metal. So my criticisms come from that not until the last three tracks did these guys start doing stuff with the music that stood out enough to warrant me, saying, hey, there's something, different, something extra going on here. I mean, the lyrics, for most of it, are pretty much your standard heavy metal lyrics dealing with war and violence and and all that stuff. The vocals are fine. Fits the style well. I would say I wish that there was more dynamic aspects to the vocals, as it seems like it's just kind of a you got a thrash kind of shout kind of type a little bit raspy type approach to it, and but it kind of stays at the same the same kind of I don't know, level or whatnot. It doesn't come off as like monotone, but it doesn't feel as organic as it could be. And you get these occasional like high hit notes that accent certain parts of the song, but they just don't. It's not enough. So it's like I'm not bashing the singer. I just think my advice, or at least my suggestion, would be to experiment more with dynamics in your voice, instead of just, it seems like, just they wanted to nail, something that was solid and that carried it through all the way and didn't waver too much into uncharted territory, as long as it, it fit the music. So for that part, the earlier stuff, I'd say the first 5 songs, the strengths, as far as I'm concerned, lie in the music itself. Because the lyrics are not, I'm a a lyric snob, I guess you could say, or a lyric elitist. Not because, basically because I like when bands are creative and, regardless of the subject matter they're dealing with, are creative enough that I can, enjoy the music and the lyrics, at the same time. Because sometimes when it becomes so generic, it's just like it almost becomes like a distraction. And for some bands, it's not a big deal if they're like bands from the past, like a band like Venom or whatever. They might have some lyrics now that would seem a little bit cheesy, but they don't distract from it because they're one of the originators of the, heavy metal, and they're the heavier types of what metal became. But when you have, everything rhymes, everything, all the word choices are really predictable, to the point where it doesn't take it to another level. It's just like it's there to kind of, it fits in it with everything, and it isn't, and it's kind of just doing its job without really trying to be a bigger part of the overall music picture, I guess you could say. But like I said, that's just me personally. I'm just a stickler when it comes to lyrics. So if they're just kind of bland and uninteresting, then that always comes across as a negative to me. But in the last 3 of the 8 total songs, there's 8 total. It's right at 41 minutes. Like the final 3 out of the 8 finally start, dealing with subject matter and dealing with and introducing musical ideas that really started to, finally get my attention and started to make me, kind of turn my opinion around from one that was mainly just kind of, I guess, apathetic or negative, to one that said, these guys have the potential to, create some stuff that is really, memorable. And that also includes the lyrics. Because, you've got, like I said, when you're dealing with like war and, violence and, and all that sort of stuff, you can run in, armies conquering another, and, or all that kind of stuff that you see a lot in, in metal, and as far as a subject matter, so many bands are covering this topic, and some of them have used the same cliche words and the same metaphors and the same, everything, so that it's hard to escape from, if you're, from it being, kind of cringy, if you're not going out of your way to try to put these ideas and, spin these ideas in a different way, make them more interesting, and just show that maybe you have, a little bit better grasp on the language, and that you can take ideas that have been done over and over and over again, and by your ability to, craft words and craft, and build and paint a picture with, language, that you can make yourself stand out from the rest. So that would be my biggest complaint, I guess, with, like I said, with the lyrics, and where it actually improved upon, like I said, through at the end. So yeah, that's just for anybody that's out there in metal land that's doing their own music stuff. It's like, spend a little extra time polishing your lyrics, especially when your vocals are clean enough that you can understand every single thing that's being said. I mean, if you're in a death metal band or grindcore band, and all you do is make, unintelligible, grunts and growls and pig squeals, it's like, that really doesn't matter much. But so yeah, musically, everybody in the band is obviously, is, nailed this style. Solos are fine. The rhythm and the section and the guitar rhythm, riffs and whatnot are all locked in perfect. It's flawless in that manner. Not surprising. I imagine these guys have, band's been around, I think, since 04-ish. So, you got that much time to tune in your style, though I think there has been several lineup changes throughout as well. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there's catchy riffs, the drums, the rhythm sections keep them with it. Nothing, out of the ordinary or extraordinary about the drumming or anything. It's just locked in, and what you'd expect. Like I says, it's a recapturing of a lot of the sound and the style that that was originated in the 80s. But like I said, when they get a chance to, vary it up a little bit, like the last three songs are Spectral Asylum, Divinity of Flesh, and When the Guns Fell Silent. And When the Guns Fell Silent is kind of, I think it's a little over 9 minutes in length. No, actually, it's 11 minutes in length. And it's good. I mean, there's a variety in tempos. There's the lyrical ideas are better. There's the solos and all the melody and everything is working real well. So, I mean, it ends the album in great fashion. Spectral Asylum is, and like I said, Divinity of Flesh are the other two, and they both work really well. So, like I said, if they had incorporated some of these different ideas within the other tracks, or at least, if you had like I said, it's eight tracks on this album. Sorry, you could devote half to representing the old school, and the other half of it representing your take on the old school mixed with your own ideas, and it probably would have been a greater success because of that. But maybe they have on previous albums. So like I said, I can only go by this one because this is the first time I've ever listened to these guys. So for me personally, other than revisiting those few tracks that actually stood out, I would probably not listen to this all that much, especially when there's so much 80s thrash and bands that take thrash and do something different with it to make it fresh and interesting. I wouldn't say this is the one I'm going to go reach for immediately if I want to listen to thrash metal. But like I said, I'm not going to knock it because as I've explained, I have my own years of exposure to this kind of style, so I'm kind of in a way I'm almost kind of worn out unless something is involved in the music that's really just fresh and interesting, where that's the element that draws me in. Because otherwise, if it's just straight up thrash metal, it's like the same way with Toxic Holocaust, another band is kind of doing the same thing. I listen to a few of the songs and I'm just like, it's just nothing there that jumps out at me that makes me even want to bother investing any more time in listening to the band. But that's just me. You may have a completely different point of view on it based on your own tastes. So I will not give this a bad review overall because of my own particular nitpicking. For me, I would say I would probably give it a 7 at best. But keep in mind, like I said, 7 out of 10. But keep in mind that my 7 could be another person's 8 or 9. I always try to rate things more critically than I think than the median or whatever, or the average. So check them out. Like I said, they're from California, so some good stuff's going on in Cali beyond all the insanity in the political world. In California, like I said, the Bay Area thrash is where a lot of it got started. So they're down in Cali, where a lot of that originated from. So definitely makes sense. So yeah, like I said, give these guys a chance. If you're already a fan of Warbringer and you want to comment on and take umbrage with maybe some of my criticisms based on your knowledge of the band probably being superior to mine, feel free to comment. Yeah, I'm always glad to be proven wrong. And maybe I'll go and because of that, I'll go and check out some of their earlier stuff and see what you're talking about. But anyway, yeah, like I said, if you're a fan of thrash, you're not going to go wrong with this album. It'll do everything that you want it to, and then eventually at the end it'll up the ante a bit and show some promise. I mean, like I said, if my advice for the band would be to not be afraid to explore, other elements, music wise, and incorporate it into your songs. You'll only separate yourself from the field that much more by doing so. I mean, that's basically the name of the game is taking what's old, and I mean, just look at like the Obituary album review I did. I mean, they took that, and they were one of the bands that was back there originally, back in the late 80s. took their old style and made it, incorporated enough variety into the most latest release that I didn't feel like I was just going down memory lane on a nostalgia trip, and it was just more of the same. It felt new enough to have a vitality of its own. But yeah, that's about it for this review, everybody. I've got some other bands lined up that I've yet to have listened to before. I think that's just as a good way to go for me personally, because I get exposed to new stuff, and I try to go and look for bands that are lesser known, compared to the ones that have established themselves, and give you a heads up on what I think about them, and whether or not you should check them out, and who they would most likely appeal to. So until the next album review, fellow metalheads, take it easy.